I hope that's
Recording in
was it.
progress.
Good evening. This is a meeting of the Greenbelt City Council. Madam Clerk, can you call the roll?
Good evening, Ms. McKinney,
Here.
Ms. Pompey,
Here.
Ms. Pope,
Here.
Ms. Niesel,
Here.
Mr. Roberts, Ms. Weaver, she's on travel, and Mayor Jordan.
Here. Please join us in a moment of silent reflection as we think about several Greenbelt residents that have passed away since the last council meeting. Those include Resident John Hall Sr., Teresa Crowley, Gary Barber, Ralph E. Webb, Jane Smidginger, Levane Townsend, and Bill Norwood. Please join us in a moment of silent reflection. Thank you, thank you. Mr. Roberts, will you lead us in the pledge? Flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thanks so much. Let's see, tonight, Mayor Pro Tem Weaver is on travel, and Danielle McKinney, is she online? Okay, she's online, but because two of our members are not here in person, we rearranged the agenda, so we won't be discussing one of the topics that we deferred to tonight. That will come up at the next meeting on September the 9th. But at this time, we're going to pause for petitions and requests. This is a part of each of our council meetings. It's an opportunity for residents to voice a concern, to bring up an information point, to make a request to the administration. Council listens. We do not react and make judgments. The city staff will evaluate, and the city clerk records each petition and request, and a response, if needed, will be forthcoming. So if you're here in person and you want to make a petition or request, if you raise your hand, you would, after being recognized, you'd walk over to the podium. You need to state your name and where you live in Greenbelt, more or less. We need that for the minutes. If you are watching on Zoom, you can submit a written question using the Q&A tab at the bottom of the screen, or you can raise your virtual hand, and after being recognized, we'll promote you so that you can speak. And if you are watching on YouTube or Facebook live streaming or cable TV, you can send us an email. The email address is questions@greenbeltmd.gov. So for petitions and requests, there's a 5-minute limit on the time that's allotted. Later in the meeting, during the agenda, there's a 3-minute limit on public participation. So once again, we're all neighbors here, so we ask that you be concise and not question the motives of others. So at this time, are there any petitions or requests? Yeah, Mr. Hartman, please.
Michael Hartman, 2 Court Garden Way. I'd like to address an issue, an agenda item that's on the consent agenda. Number 28, purchase of a public works building maintenance vehicle. And I didn't have a chance to look at the attachments, but I have 2 questions. One, is that passenger vehicle equipped so that it can transport people in wheelchairs and other people with disabilities? And the second question I have is this an electric vehicle or a gas vehicle or a hybrid or what? So can I have an answer to that, please? Since it's on the consent agreement agenda.
we could pull the item off of the consent agenda if it's council's will, or Mr. Somerone, if you'd like to respond. But that is really, petitions and requests is not a question and answer time.
No, I realize that, but when I first suggested that, um, when you were doing this a while ago, and I suggested that petitions and requests come after the vote on the consent agenda, this is exactly why I asked for you to do that. Now you did it, so now I'm asking either to if you can answer the question or take it off the consent agenda.
I'm willing to pull it off the consent agenda. It's a long agenda tonight, but I'm willing to do that. Yeah.
I think maybe Mr. Samaron has a quick answer to it, so we don't have to prolong this.
The responses are quick. However, there is a theme or an element of the discussion that can be lengthy. For example, we're trying to get the most use out of the transit vehicle by having it be both primarily a cargo van, but ordering the 12 seats so that it can be used as a passenger van. So it'll have dual purposes and it will be able to transport people. The challenge with getting an electric vehicle that served the dual purpose, we could not readily find something that's available to us. An option does exist, it's just not available to us. So we could purchase an EV right away, but it will be a cargo van that will be used by the maintenance. And the upfitting for passenger, that's not readily available. So we could only get at this price point a gas-powered vehicle that serves dual purpose, or we could secure an EV vehicle that would only have one purpose, a cargo van. So that's the element that it's a lengthier conversation that.
Thank you.
What about the accessibility feature? If it's going to be used as a backup to the connector, is it able to transport people with disabilities?
Not in this configuration. It does not have a lift, and it would need a lift to accommodate a wheelchair.
Yeah, thank you very much. So council could pull this off of the consent agenda if additional discussion is merited. Other petitions or requests, please, Ms. Downs.
I'm Jermaine Timmermans. I live at 6907 Lady Anne Court. And I've only appeared before the city council once, and that was in 2007. So I have, and that was with a couple of requests. I have 5 now, so I hope it's not too many for the time allotted. But a problem just came up recently that I think you should know about. And it's that I wasn't able to get a live person on the phone when I called up Greenbelt. I did leave a voicemail message last week about questions about this meeting, and I left my name and telephone number, but I never received a response. So I would very much like you to make the city more accessible and more responsive by phone at the main phone number, because I think that's the essence of Greenbelt. So the tossing of litter in our city has been the worst that I have ever seen in a long time. I don't know if you all have noticed the ramp from 193 westbound to 202 northbound on Saturday was a mess. There were pallets there, 2 wooden pallets. There were all sorts of other dumping of rubbish. It wasn't just candy wrappers or, random litter. It was obvious intentional dumping. And it's just a disgrace. That corner is a bad one anyway, but this is the worst I've seen it. And so I think I did report it to the State Highway Administration. I hope they took care of it. I haven't seen it since. And the spot is one that needs regular litter and trash cleanup. I would like to suggest that the city install a camera to monitor the area so that those who litter and dump illegally can be fined for the offense. Too little fining for these sorts of offenses occur. I know that you need evidence of dumping and litter throwing in order to issue a fine. And that evidence is usually hard to come by. But authorities need to be more proactive in the matter. Install a camera there. It doesn't have to be a permanent one. It could be a temporary one, the kind that they had at the Greenbelt Lake Recycling Center, and so that it could catch who is doing it and fine them, because at least some of the expenses that the littering and dumping cause might be recouped. Several years ago, I donated a considerable number of daffodils to the city, bulbs, that is, with request to Public Works that the majority of them be planted near the bus shelter at Lakeside Drive by Legion Drive. Very few of those bulbs were planted there, which I could see in the spring because not much came up. I would like to donate more daffodil bulbs to the city, but only if my request to have 1 bag of 40 Dutch Master bulbs and 1 bag of 20 Red Devon Narcissus bulbs planted in that location only, which I did specify the location the last time, and apparently it did not happen. Then I would like the mayor to issue a proclamation that November is National Pancreatic Cancer Awareness Month, and that the 3rd Thursday in November, which is the 21st this year, is World Pancreatic Cancer Day. Doing this will bring the most deadly form of cancer to the attention again, or for the first time, to citizens of Greenbelt and beyond, and lead them to learn more about the disease, its causes, and the research being done on its early diagnosis and treatments. The heartening news is that the 5-year survival rate for pancreatic cancer has increased to 13% this year, which is up from 7.2% for the years 2000 to 2004. And for the last 3 years, the 5-year survival rate has been going up by 1% every year. So that's a really good form of progress for this very tough form of cancer to detect and to cure.
Running low on time, but keep on, please.
Okay, this is the longest one, but I want to see it through to the end.
Is it council's will to let her continue?
I think it's fine. I would agree to let her go, yes.
Okay, thank you. I thought I had last appeared before the council 10 years ago to request a raise for council members who hadn't received one in a long time, nearly 20 years before. When I checked my records to see when my request actually was made, I was shocked to see that it was 17 years ago. I have heard that the council members have received a small raise in the meantime to approximately $12,000, but would like to suggest an additional raise. I would like to request that the council grant itself a raise to a minimum of $14,210, as the cost of living starting in 2008 has increased to 42.1%, and that's based on Consumer Price Index, which is calculated by the Bureau of Labor Statistics. 15.1% of that has occurred since 2022. The council members devote many hours of their time to their positions, researching and reflecting on various city issues, attending numerous city meetings and public events, answering citizens' questions on Greenbelt matters, and attending conferences such as the annual Maryland Municipal League and the National League of Cities.
I'm going to ask you to go ahead and wrap up, although I appreciate your petition, the 5 parts of it, but it would seem unjust for me to allow you to go on, particularly when you're talking about providing a raise to council. I mean, the news review will probably pick up on that.
Well, in essence, I would, in my own opinion, I think an increase to 15,000 would be no more than just. And that the difference between that figure and the payment made at the time to council members serving during the pandemic, that should be granted, because they made a great deal of sacrifices then also. So, and I thank you for all your efforts.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
And I appreciate your request for a proclamation. Unfortunately, we don't have another council meeting in November, but I can still issue that and figure out a way to present it or to make it public. Yeah, thank you. Yes, Mr. Orleans, please.
Good evening, Bill Orleans, Greenbelt. I will, in the absence of Ms. Weaver, I will defer one of the comments I was going to make tonight until the next meeting. But at the last meeting, I had asked by way of MPIA request for two documents, one of which I received, and that was a copy of the memo from the JEDI action team. I had also asked for a copy of the email Ms. Weaver had communicated with the city management with regard to having it on last regular meeting's agenda. I did not receive that. But the memorandum I received from the memorandum of the JEDI action team is not signed, except generically, collectively, the JEDI action team. Frankly, I don't know who's on the JEDI action team. I don't recall, I probably should have been more thorough in my going through past agendas, but I don't recall council making an appointment of such action team. If it exists and council did not make the appointment, I question how it exists. But in any event, if they're writing a memo to council, there should be the members of that team who agree with the content of the complaint should be named. They should not be anonymous. So my question, my petition tonight is, one, I'd like a copy, as I requested in my MPIA request form, of the email in which Mayor Pro Tem Councilmember Weaver asked it for inclusion on the last meeting's agenda. And I'd like furthermore to know who's on the JEDI action team, when they were appointed or named or selected or determined. I don't know the process since I don't remember it ever announced. And specifically, I'd like to know whether all or some of the members of the JEDI action team were in agreement with this memorandum. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Are there any other petitions or requests? Hearing none, let's move to the next item on the agenda. Wait, I do see someone,
Two hands
Stephanie. And I see Tim George. Do you have your hand? It looks like you have your hand up. Do you need to get promoted to? So Stephanie, go ahead and allow you to speak.
As follow on to what Bill O'Leans just said, I had submitted a request for a list of the members on the JEDI team, and I've yet to receive them.
Okay. Well, thank you. The city manager, city staff will follow up.
We're following our MPIA request process.
Okay.
Okay, but how long does that take?
Depends. Mr. Samro, are you prepared to respond?
We received it, we're reviewing, and we'll complete the requirement within the time allotted. We have up to 30 days to respond. We certainly look to respond to MPI requests as soon as possible.
Okay.
Okay, but I do have a problem with that. Just for a list of this team that seems to be known to no one, I can't find it anywhere online. I've talked to people around town about it. No one knows who's on this. So I'm curious as to, first of all, why I had to submit a request for it, because why aren't these groups and teams and committees listed online? And why does it take so long just to get a list of people on a committee?
Okay, I assure you that the city manager, city clerk will get back to you expeditiously.
Yeah, but it's been what, 2 weeks?
Oh, they're following the legal process. in reviewing and getting back to you within 30 days as required by the MPIA. And I do believe that this is why we don't generally go back and forth in petitions and requests.
So it's petitions and requests, so your request has been recorded, and the procedure that is in place will be followed. That's all I can really say.
Yeah, thanks.
Yeah. Mr. Roberts.
Well, I think there's a big problem there, and I've faced the same thing. No one will give me the information. And I'm on the city council. I can't even get the information. And yet you're talking about putting me on trial, at the next regular meeting, and no one's going to have any information? How am I going to protect myself or stand up for myself if I have no information and if no members of the public have information? This is a problem. And there's some other problems going on that I'm not going to mention now, but this one raised tonight is a big one.
Okay, Mr. Roberts, you're familiar with petitions and requests, and you know that response, it's a time for listening. It's not questions and answers back and forth to council or staff, but it is an opportunity to formally raise a question. So let's leave it at that, and let's please move on. Hey, next up is actually the consent agenda. And I'm wondering if any council member has an addition or modification to the consent agenda. If not, could I please have a motion to adopt the consent agenda?
I move that we adopt the consent agenda.
Okay. Any discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? Motion carries. And that's going to move us to the agenda itself. And I'm wondering if any council member has an item that they'd like to pull or amend from the agenda. It's a rather long agenda. And I actually am going to make a request. And it's the item dealing with the legislative issue tracking. I need a little bit more time to work on this, and I'm wondering, Councilmember McKinney, would it be okay with you if we were to hold this perhaps until the 9th, the next meeting?
I'm fine with that.
Okay, thank you. So I'd like to make a motion to adopt the agenda as amended. Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? The motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you, Ms. McKinney. Okay. So moving on to the next section of the agenda is communications, and there's a couple of presentations. We're going to start off with Municipal Government Month. November is Municipal Government Month. In recognition of the event, the city sponsors many activities that display government in action, including the Community Health and Wellness Fair, the Walk to School Day, If I Were Mayor contest for 4th grade students, the Welcome Packet Program, Fall Fest, Wild Rumpus, shredding events, and electronic recycling events. So many features, many activities, videos throughout the month showing Greenbelt's municipal government in action on the social media site. So I have a proclamation. I'm wondering, Mr. Varda, would you be willing to accept? And Mr. Kim or Ms. Andrews, why don't you all come up?
Yeah, let's all come up. Come on, don't be shy.
And why? It's because this is municipal government in action. So, whereas there are 157 municipalities in the state of Maryland, and municipal residents account for more than 1/3 of our state's population, and whereas municipalities represent the most responsive level of government, allowing citizens to have a direct access to their elected officials, And whereas Greenbelt, like many other municipalities, strives to enhance its residents' quality of life by providing a full range of services and programs, including police, public works, social services, recreation, planning and community development, administration, and finance. And whereas in conjunction with Municipal Government Month, the city, we fly the municipal government flag at the municipal building outside. We sponsor many activities that display many of the actions that we engage in as a community day by day. So now, therefore, I, Emmett V. Jordan, by the authority vested in me by the residents and City Council of Greenbelt, do hereby proclaim November 2024 to be Municipal Government Month in the city of Greenbelt, and join the Maryland Municipal League and our sister cities and towns in educating our residents about local government and in celebrating the importance and success of municipal government throughout our state. So I'd like to present this to both of you and all of you. Okay.
Congratulations.
Yeah, congratulations. Ms. Andrews, do you want to talk a little bit about some of the special things that we do? I mean, we do so many of the things that I've elaborated here. So many things happen to make municipal government work, and November is a time when we kind of celebrate many of those things. So what do you have planned?
Good evening, council and residents and staff members. I'm glad to be here tonight. As the mayor mentioned, yes, we do have, we're celebrating Municipal Government Month, and so far we have posted social media posts recognizing the different areas that help make municipal government work, whether that be recreation, public works, administration. All of us have a hand in making our city look great for our residents and for those who are visiting in the area. We also have, of course, several events. Next week, we have one major one, which is our Gobble Wobble. So if you haven't already registered for it, there's still time and opportunity to register for that event. It's one of my favorite events of the year. It was my first one when I first came to Greenbelt, and I just love the atmosphere and the families that come out, and the support of the staff for that event. And we also have our flag that's raised up outside of the building. And Greenbelt, definitely, we have a lot of events going on, and we love our residents, and we want to make sure that everyone else sees the great things that we have in Greenbelt.
Yeah, one of the things that I enjoy about this month is actually seeing the videos, highlighting the different departments and what individual employees are actually up to in their day-to-day activities. They're very insightful, and you can find them on Facebook, on Instagram, on LinkedIn. They're out there, and of course our own cable TV channel. So yeah, I really do enjoy that. So thank you for your work on this project, and thanks to all the staff that are here, even those of you that refuse to come up and accept the proclamation.
And if I could say one more thing, next month, December, we have a lot of activities scheduled for the city of Greenbelt. So if you are interested in seeing what we have, you can look on our city calendar. I believe it's something for every week, so that all our family and friends can enjoy.
It's amazing. Thank you so much.
Chandria, when's the tree lighting? I've seen a lot of buzz about the tree lighting. People are very excited about that.
Mr. Varda, December 6th,
there you go.
which is right
Great.
around the corner.
It really is. Great, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much. Thank you. Okay, and next up, I've got a presentation at the Maryland Municipal League Excellence in Leadership Fall Conference in Cambridge, Maryland last week. The city of Greenbelt received a Municipal Achievement Award for the Greenbelt Recreation Department's Summer Camp Inclusion Program. This Municipal Achievement Award is presented annually to cities and towns that have successfully implemented policies and programs that advance local governance and the well-being of our communities. At the heart of Greenbelt Recreation's department mission is a commitment to creating programs that are accessible and inclusive for all residents, regardless of ability. And our summer camp inclusion program is the most extensive example of this commitment. So I hope I didn't steal your thunder, but I'd like to present you too with the plaque. Why don't you come up and we can. Yeah, congratulations on this well-deserved honor.
Yes, thank you.
So I don't know if you'd like to talk a little bit about it, but this program really made a big difference. A lot of good feedback from families and kids who come and are involved in the summer camps.
Yeah, inclusion program, not just summer camps, throughout all our recreation departments, very important to us. I have Ann Ottomans here with us. She is the assistant director of recreation programs, and inclusion is a passion of hers. She spends a whole lot of time training our staff, finding opportunities for them to learn on how to work with kids in inclusion and streamlining them right into our program. So I'm going to let Ann talk a little bit about all she's done and the people that have helped her with this program.
Welcome, Ann.
Thank you. Honestly, I'm going to hand this off to my colleague, Priya Gardner-Lemieux. She can't be with us this evening, but she is our key staff member for all things inclusion. And she's only been with us for about a year in this role, and she has such a passion for making sure that everyone in our programs has the support they need to be successful and to enjoy themselves. So the inclusion program has many elements. We start with trying to develop a relationship with the parents, learn as much as we can about the children, and then we set up an interview with the parents and collaborate on a strategy to support each individual child. From there, we develop an individualized support plan for each participant. Then we really enhanced our training program. All of our camp staff got inclusion training. And then we have a core group of about 12 to 15 inclusion staff every summer that get additional training. And we had some great support from our colleagues in CARES. CARES staff provided a behavior management strategy workshop. And then the crisis intervention team provided a workshop on de-escalation. Sometimes these kids get kind of worked up, and if you have some strategies to bring them back and de-escalate a situation, that's really helpful. We brought out the Autism Society of Maryland to provide a workshop specifically for children on the autism spectrum, their characteristics and support strategies to work with them. And then all summer long, we work really hard to support the staff and the campers that have special needs. And honestly, inclusion is part of everyone's job in Greenbelt Recreation. All of us work, every single staff member work with our camps. And our camp coordinators do a phenomenal job working with Priya, the TR inclusion person, to collaborate and do everything we can to support everyone in our programs. And Greg's right, it's not just summer. Year-round, we're providing support with anyone with special needs, and it's something we're really, really proud of. So it's an honor to be recognized for a passion we have here in Greenbelt. So thank you.
No, thank you. And, on behalf of the City Council, we are just really, really proud to be able to accept the award at the conference, to bring it home for you, because I know that training, as you've just said, extends year-round. So such an important part of Greenbelt, these summer camps to begin with. About how many young people came through the summer camps this year?
Oh, gosh. Some come all summer. I'd have to do some quick math. Some just come for 2 weeks. On average, we have about 300 campers at any given time. So I'd have to get back with you with an exact figure.
I just
but
know
a
in the
lot of-
summer there are campers all over the place during the day, and it's a powerful thing. Yeah, Ms. Pope.
Yeah, I just want to thank you as well. I think from the beginning to now, I mean, you guys did a tremendous job. I know Priya, you know, when she came to the school and did a little internship there, but it's just amazing. And it's so important to have this inclusivity for those children, which I've been working with, you know, with inclusion classrooms for the past 20 some years. So it's not always easy, but it's well worth it. And the children itself, they make so much progress, you know, and especially it's so important for them to be in a group setting as well. So thank you very much. I'm grateful. Thank you.
Well, thank you, and thank you, Councilmember Pope, for being so supportive of our staff and providing those opportunities for some additional training at Spring Hill Lake Elementary School. And you've connected us with a parent support group.
I did.
And so we'll
yes.
be at the elementary school on Wednesday, working with the families and letting them know what we can provide here in Greenbelt in
Yes,
terms of
and-
recreation programs.
And
So-
thank you for taking on this task, and thank you for, you know, accepting the invitation. So I think they're very excited to have you guys and come and speak. I know Ms. Wilcher is definitely very excited about her program. So
Okay.
thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I see we have a comment from the public. Shall we, Mr. Hartman, would you like to make a comment?
Michael Hartman, 2 Court Garden Way. I want to thank Greg and his whole staff for this. Greg is a leader, sets the tone and the environment for his whole team. And he's doing a fantastic job in setting that example and the team following. So I really appreciate these efforts. And I would ask the council to remember this evening when budget time comes around, because sometimes these accommodations cost a little bit more money. And if there's a budget request for additional funding for some of these programs, I hope that you remember that when it's time to pass a budget, because that's important too. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you so much. Let's see. Next, we've got a quick presentation on the stop sign camera program. And I did request to get this presentation on the agenda. I was hearing from a lot of members of the public with questions about exactly what was going on with the cameras at the stop sign locations. So our police chief is here, Chief Bowers. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Yeah.
So I will have a short presentation for you. I don't want to take up a lot of time. I know there's a long agenda for tonight, and you'll have a few questions. And we're going to tackle this topic again at a later work session. But if I get Ms. Anderson, she can put the slides up for me. So last legislative session, the Maryland General Assembly modified the Maryland Transportation Article 217071 to allow for the automated stop sign enforcement monitoring systems, otherwise known as a camera. And that piece of legislation will allow us to do essentially what we do with speed camera and with red lights. Some key notes that are in this particular bill: it has to be within a school zone. It's a civil penalty of $40 that's sent to the registered vehicle owner. And all of the locations have to be approved by the county. So we don't have any autonomous authority to pick a location. We can pick a location, do a study, and then we have to request that to the county to get that particular site approved. As you know, the county is still in the process of working through their enabling legislation. They actually have a work session tomorrow on that legislation with final approval sometime in December. So they're still working on that piece of legislation. Go to the next slide. So what we did is we conducted a study, and we've placed the camera devices out at multiple locations across the city. To date, we've got data for 5 locations, and we have 2 more additional locations going. And so we get the data back, and it comes with a series of videos. And I will play just a one or two of the videos for you so you get an idea of the type of violations that we're seeing. This is the intersection at Ridge and Southway. And just click on where it says dashboard.
Yeah, let me ask a question. So
Yes, sir.
it's a question about can we make the screen larger, and is this going out on cable TV as well, or is this just something that we can see in Zoom?
I assume if it's on the screen, it's going out on the cable.
Okay. Okay, thank you so much.
Yep. And so these are just some of the series of videos that we have.
That was
So
someone
you can
going-
see that that particular vehicle didn't even really make an effort to stop. And if you scroll down just a little bit beneath, I'll show you one more. I don't want to spend a lot of time on these videos, so you get the general idea of the type of violations that we're seeing at these locations.
Southway and Ridge.
Mm-hmm. So you get an idea of the type of infractions that are happening. We've done these at a number of locations: Cherrywood Lane and Breezewood, Southway and Ridge, Research and Ridge. We've also done Spring Hill Drive at Edmonston right now, and we've done Ridge Road at Garden Way. And so you can see these are the data that we've gotten from those: the number of vehicles coming through per day, the number of violations, and then the percentage of the vehicles that actually violate the law, right? So you can see at Southway and Ridge is the worst one. We've got 3,100 vehicles approximately a day that come through that intersection, with about 93% of those vehicles not coming to a full and complete stop at the stop sign.
It's unacceptable.
Yep. So, and then you can go down through and you can look at the statistics for the others. We picked these as they were locations where we either have had past complaints, motor vehicle crashes, or they're around the schools. Those are the kind of our data points that were driving us, wanting to make sure that if we're going to have a program that it's affecting traffic safety, pedestrian safety. And so those are the areas that we selected. We have two additional sites that we'll be working on. One is Ridge at Laurel Hill, and the other will be Cherrywood, facing the opposite direction than we did it the first time, because that seems to be, it's a really busy intersection. We have a lot of pedestrians that cross through that particular section. So those are the two follow-up locations that we're doing. And again, you can see from the data, there's a substantial issue at those particular locations with complying with the law. I know the question will be, well, Chief, what is a stop? You know, the Maryland Transportation article defines it as a full and complete stop. You have a California stop where you're doing 1 mile an hour. If nobody's there, do you go through? Those are all parameters that the law does not define. It defines it as a full and complete stop, right? So that is how the program is currently set. To have a conversation about changing a standard, that's something we'd have to talk about at a work session. But as of now, I mean, the law states that you must come to a full and complete stop at the stop line or the closest place to the stop sign if there is no line before proceeding through the intersection. And so, Nina, if we go to the last slide. So given this information, what do we need to do next, right? So we need to have the county pass their ordinance, right, and get that piece done. We need to talk more internally at a city council work session about the direction that you wish to go with the program. Is this a program that you want to move forward with? If you decide this is something you want to move forward with, we need to define our school zones in the areas where they're not already defined. They have to be within a half mile of a school. So we know what those areas are, but we would need to take legislative action in some places to establish city school zones. Then we would need to pass a city ordinance to authorize the deployment of these particular devices. And then we would need to get a vendor who we have already, but we would need to approve a contract with that vendor. So those are sort of the steps that we need to take at this point, and we'll continue to work through our study. We have a work session coming up on the 11th of December. We'll be presenting more information about automated speed, or correction, automated stop sign enforcement to you for your consideration at that time.
Hey, thank you for that update. I did have a couple of questions. So the videos, it's just startling to see some vehicles just flying through some of those stop signs, and you know it's unfortunate, but I have the feeling that some of the people that are blowing through the stop signs are our own residents. So I'm just wondering, uh, how much consistency we have just in terms of marking the line in front of stop sign. I know that we've been making some improvements, modifications to crosswalks and whatnot. I think we're using California blocked squares or something instead of just a line. So that means that the line's a little bit thicker. So is there a consistency in what the lines at stop signs?
So in terms of painting all lines, that's a public works function, and best I can tell from my travels, they all are very consistently painted. In areas where they need to be touched up, that gets done on a regular basis. So, I don't think it's a signage issue or a stop line issue.
Okay. And the videos is how can, if a resident wanted to go and see for themselves what's happening at these intersections, how can they do that?
So we have not made that public yet. I'm going to cut Mr. Solomon off, and I apologize. We have not made that public yet. Because it's a pilot, there's only a limited number of videos for each of the locations. There's about 6 videos for each location. That is something that if we decide to move the program forward, you could make all of them public if you chose to. And then I apologize to Mr. Solomon for cutting him off because he was going to speak.
We have not publicly released the URL by virtue of putting it up on the screen. We have released it. So any residents who want to go back a couple minutes and look at the URL will have access to the videos.
Just saying. I was a good girl. But I think, first of all, I have 2 comments from Jay Davis, which I want to read first. So first, she said, please use the correct name, Greenbelt West.
As opposed to West Greenbelt.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then she says, what is the standard for a right turn at a stop sign or red light?
You still have to come to a full and complete stop before proceeding through.
Okay, thank you. My question was, first my comment was it's very important that we did not serve tickets. So no one received a $40 ticket yet, because I think people, aren't you lucky? But there was a lot of concern, and there was a lot of chatter about, the fines and the council of, trying to make more money, and there was all kinds of chatter going on. So I think it's important to say this is just a pilot so far, and no one received any fines. The other thing is people were trying to get public input, and that was a little confusing when I looked at it, that it stated you can give input. When and where, it did not say. So I think we're going to have to make that very clear, that that this is a pilot. After the pilot, we're looking at the data, and then we're going to have a work session or maybe even a public forum on this, whichever way we want to go for. But I think those things are kind of important, and we might want to put those on the website so people just understand that better.
Yes, ma'am.
Thank you.
Mr. Roberts.
Thank you, I appreciate it. I was wondering, have you looked at Ridge and Eastway or Ridge and Northway at all, or?
Not at this time. Like I said, the one thing is they have to be within that half mile of the school itself.
Oh, so is Eastway?
Eastway is too far out.
Too far out. But I think that if you looked at that, you'll probably find that's probably one of the worst offenders, because it's a relatively straight road there. People tend to go a little faster. But anyway, maybe that's in the future. Thank
Perhaps. Yes, sir.
And following on that line of questioning, none of the sites are in Greenbelt East. And thinking down at Mandan and Matthew Street, that's probably, how close does it have to be to a school?
Has to be within a half mile of the school.
That's within a half mile of Magnolia.
Maybe we haven't looked there at this point. We've sort of focused kind of on Center City right now, and then we can continue to, I think before we hit too many sites as terms of a pilot, I think we need to make some decisions about, do we want to move forward? We've collected a lot of data at this point. And then if we decide to have a program and then expand to additional sites beyond kind of the initial scope, we could continue to do more data gathering and determine if there's other sites that are suitable.
Okay. And I do have one technical question. Councilman Adams from College Park is talking to him at the Maryland Municipal League Conference, and they in College Park are also looking at these stop sign cameras. And he asserted that in addition to gathering data on cars at intersections, these cameras can also be used to look at pedestrians as they are determining how long it takes them to cross the street, or if there are challenges with pedestrians. Do you know, is the vendor that we are working with, is it the same vendor as College Park?
It's the same vendor it's the only vendor that there is currently. So everybody's using the same company.
Okay. Would it be possible, could I ask you to check into that, or to find out what Councilman Adams
I can
is
inquire
talking
with the
about?
manufacturer, with the company.
Okay. And finally, I think I see Stephanie has her hand up, and I don't know if it's still up from before. It's down now. Okay. Okay.
Mr. Mayor, on the item of the AI component of the cameras, these cameras can do that. A lot of our other cameras systems that we have can do that. We do not have those features turned on. So that's, I think if we have that conversation about tracking how long someone takes or other things, is
how long it takes someone to cross, not so much how long it takes them, but getting a better sense if there's not enough time for whatever reason to cross the street.
There's a light signal. I think that there's appropriate uses of it. We've heard complaints of the intersection of Mandan and 193 that light, the timing is difficult for some folks. I would like to, when we start exploring things of what the data extraction that the computer systems can do on the video, I think we should have that conversation about AI technology uses on the video feed, because a lot of the cameras have that functionality. We've been intentional about not using those features.
Understood. But if it helps pedestrian safety, it's something, and
Oh,
cyclists as well.
Oh, absolutely. There are valid, good uses for it.
Well, Chief, thank you so much for the update. So what the time frame for this? What's the time frame?
So we currently have a December 11th work session scheduled to talk about traffic issues. So we'll address it further then, and then get some direction from council at a future meeting about if you want us to continue to proceed. If you want us to continue to proceed, we'll have draft ordinance and things like that prepared for you to take into consideration.
Okay, so the sites listed on the agenda, they're already installed.
Yes, sir.
Okay, Ms. Pope.
So I just, quick question. So just to make sure I understand this correctly, so we can actually make up our, like you said, some people just plow right through the stop sign, and others, like if we have a three-way stop and there's nobody there, some people maybe roll through it. Can you adjust the rules, or do you have to go strictly by, no, you have to come to a full stop regardless, if it's within our city?
So I think that I would say that you could potentially in the back end through their engineering adjust the rules, but I think the danger becomes at 2 a.m. when nobody's out. If you go through at 1 mile an hour, is it a big deal? Probably not. But if there's a pedestrian in the crosswalk when you do that, right, and the computer may not necessarily see there's a pedestrian, it's just going to read the vehicle speed and say, oh, that was okay, but you almost hit somebody. So I mean, part of the approval process for a citation is an officer review. And so that, you have to decide what is going to be our threshold. And I think that may be the more tricky part of the equation, because if you start deviating, then how far do you deviate, right? And once you start making exceptions, then what's the next? Like, if you follow where I'm going, I think you have to just stick with the definition of the transportation article. I get where California stop or those kinds of things are typically acceptable, but if we're going to have a program and you're going to really start to enforce it, you have to make sure you're enforcing it evenly and you take any subjectivity out of the equation.
Okay, thank you.
Just one final question. So the Maryland Municipal League, the legislative priorities, there's two. One of them is to allow civilian employees to review stop sign, the speed camera citations and red light citations, I believe. So would these stop sign cameras, would they also be included?
They would be. So the red light cameras are already
Already allowed.
a civilian employee. It's the speed cameras that are have to be a sworn police officer. And so that's the one we would like to see changed.
Okay, okay. So these stop sign cameras would be changed or could be changed, or should we bring this question up?
I
to
think they
the-
should all be the same.
Mhm.
So whichever way you go, they should all be the same criteria.
Makes sense to me, yes. I mean, thank you. Yes, please. You need to go up to the microphone so we would hear it.
Are we limited to a $40 fine? Because I think that isn't much of a deterrent. I parked in DC and was about 5 or 6 minutes over my parking time in a certain area of DC, and I got a $100 ticket. That was a deterrent. Believe me, I will never do that again. So I think the fine should be raised because it is a serious crime. I remember that Laura Bush went through a stop sign and actually killed somebody when she was a young person, and she's never she has regretted that to this day. So it's a way of protecting everybody, and I think it should be applied consistently and taken seriously.
Yeah, good point. I have understood that the fines in Washington D.C. are 100, but I believe the $40 fine is a state law. So it's not something that something we can ask about, but it's not something that we have jurisdiction over. Mr. Hartman?
Michael Hartman, 2 Court Garden Way. Is there any way to expand this to include people who ride bicycles and sail through stop signs? Is there anything that we can do about it other than not
Well,
hear them?
I kind of asked the chief that question, so I think after we get through the pilot, we'll begin to look at other capacities. But thank you for that point. Thank you. Well, if there's no further discussion on that presentation, let's move to the next item on the agenda, which is administrative reports. Mr. Salmeron, how are you tonight?
I'm doing great, thank you, Mr. Mayor. Busy week that we just passed, and a busy week ahead. We are continuing our coordination of the District 22 Legislative Dinner, which will take place on December 3rd at the American Legion. So we sent out the invitations and working on the presentation for that. We continue to host our FBI monthly coordination meetings. While we are aware the results of the election may have an impact on the project, we will continue to work on the project until we are told otherwise by the powers that be, primarily GSA and FBI. We are currently working on EV charging infrastructure stations. We anticipate bringing a contract to council at the next meeting in December, and that is for contracts for the installation of 8 charging stations at the community center / library parking lot. So I mentioned this to council because it's the window to encumber those funds that council set aside for EV charging infrastructure is very limited. We have 1 meeting left, and we're making a big decision about putting 8 charging stations in one place. So the public, we're airing it to the public. It's not new information. We presented it as part of the EV infrastructure plan, but just reminder that, hey, we're moving forward, and we're sort of time-sensitive project that we need to move forward with the ARPA allocation. So expect that for next meeting. We're currently reviewing the shortlisted of the finalists for the website design. We received 78 proposals. We had hoped to bring it at this council meeting contract, but we want to do our due diligence with all 78 proposals, and we're interviewing the finalists, and we're down to 4. So I want to thank 3. I want to thank Chandra and Tim and the team that reviewed all 78 proposals and got down to 10, and now we're down to 3. So a lot of great proposals. The Economic Development Office hosted the county's Municipal Economic Development Directors meeting here in this space. So that's our 2nd meeting that we've had since John Mason's been here. So we're getting out of this engagement with our economic development folks. Also, John Mason and Chandra hosted or partnered with the county's Economic Development Office to produce the podcast highlighting Greenbelt's economic development work. So I encourage you to check that video out. It was well made. Public Works installed pedestrian crosswalks and completed the grinding of 55 Bradford pear trees, and we're preparing on the installation of new trees. The Gale hosted the second Family Caregiver Appreciation Day for 27 caregivers as part of the National Family Caregivers Month. We attended the Veterans Day Memorial event, was well attended. Thank you, Council, for joining us. And we welcome our new officer by administering the oath of office ceremony for Kendall. So thank you, Councilmember Pompey, for doing that for us. And finally, worked on the coordination of testimony and participation in the county's public hearing on the fire staffing reallocation plan. We provided transportation for residents. The event was well attended, not just by residents, but surrounding communities. While we did not get many answers, if any, at the public hearing, it does raise the profile of the issues and brings it to a larger audience. And we are hopeful that County Council will take that information and find some actionable items related to the hearing. And with that, I want to ask Council, what's Council's desire with sending a letter expressing our gratitude and requesting a follow-up on items that Councilmember Pompey requested as part of the hearing?
Yeah, would you like to speak on?
Yeah, sure. I mean, I think, as Mr. Summeron said, the meeting was well attended and the residents were really grateful for that transportation. I mean, I must have heard every resident say multiple times, like, thank you for making this so easy for us. So that was a great idea by staff. So thank you for doing that. But so there were really no answers given to us at that meeting, other than I did speak briefly to Chief Green, and she said they're working on their data transparency. So we'll see. But I do think that we should follow up, thank the County Council for hosting the meeting, and then reiterate like our sort of the points that we're looking for, right? Like the data transparency, you know, our involvement. I think, I can't remember what the points that were in my talking points though. We wanted a task force so that we could be more involved. And I have to say that was really echoed throughout the community. That really wasn't just us. That was other communities as well. Were like, please just include us. And even a resident got up there and said, you know, if you had worked with a Greenbelt resident said, you know, if you had worked with our council, we would have trusted you going forward through this. So, which is what the mayor has been saying all along, really. So,
Yeah. So,
Anyway.
yeah. Thank you so much for taking the lead and making the presentation at the hearing. Ms. Pope and I were out of town,
Yeah.
but I actually heard from a couple of the other mayors who were there, and they praised the city of Greenbelt for the testimony and the fact that we had many residents there, and for the fact that we continue to ask these questions to try and find a solution, a collaborative solution to making sure that our fire and EMS in particular are maintained at the same, if not a higher standard. That's all we're asking. So you'll circulate a draft and we can get that out by December, if not sooner, this week perhaps. Yeah. Any questions for the city manager?
No, I just thank him for helping me to work on that testimony. And I have to say, originally, we thought I was going to have 5 minutes, and then we got in there and it was 2 minutes. So then we had to do like a quick switch it up and figure out how I was going to fit everything in. And I appreciate his help with that and his leadership on that.
That's a little odd. Usually they allow elected officials, I believe, 5 minutes, and because we're speaking for our constituents and, you know, and members of the general public too. But I suppose because there were so many people there and so many people from Greenbelt, it worked out okay.
Yeah. Greenbelt really showed out. I'm very proud of our residents for being there.
Okay. Well, let us at this time go ahead and move to the next item on the agenda, which would be item number 11. No, item number 12. No, item number 11. And this is a discussion on filling city council vacancy. The legislation, it's from the Board of Elections Report 2024-04. provisions and proposed amendments regarding council vacancies. The council has been reviewing procedures for filling vacant council seats. On July the 29th, council met with the Board of Elections to discuss a report outlining recommended procedures. On August the 12th, 2024, the board submitted a revised report proposing 2 recommendations to amend the city charter, section 32, regarding council vacancies. Then, a few weeks ago, on October 14th, council revisited the topic, but did not provide clear guidance on drafting legislation for a public hearing. Whether to pursue a code amendment or a charter amendment, council direction is now sought to clarify next steps. So at the last meeting, what I in particular, and I think the rest of council, we wanted to make sure that the public had ample notice about this change. So I think anytime we change the charter, we should publish it in writing in an official organ that most Greenbelters would see, which means the Greenbelt News Review. And also a public hearing. It's just a practice. I think it's a good practice just to make sure that everyone has as much notice as possible, because changing the charter is a big deal. But this question about whether to do it, how we do it in terms of the resolution or changing it's the charter by resolution or by code amendment. So I'm wondering, Mr. Salmarone, do you have any advice, or what pros and cons? Is there really any difference in one or the other?
I would prefer to let Steve talk about it, as he's joining us in representation of the Board of Elections online. And I understand there are other board members or other advisory board members.
Would you like to come up to the microphone as well?
Steve, able to mic?
Steve Gilbert, are you there?
Yes, I am, Mr. Mayor.
Okay. Well, thank you for coming before us again, and thank you for all the work you're doing on behalf of the city in helping to clarify this procedure and other procedures as we gear up for the election coming up next November. So what are the pros and cons, in a nutshell, of doing it through the charter or by resolution? Is there any real advantage to one or the other?
Yes, sir. You have basically 2 questions before you on this vacancy issue. One is whether to amend the charter in detail and set out the procedure there, and the other way you can do it is just to say in the in the charter that you're referring to the election code, and then have the election code have the details. But the document you have before you sets out basically the procedure we've been talking about before, which we talked about at the last meeting with the 60 days and 180 days and the special election and so forth. So that level of detail is what will take a long time for the council to address. The business about amending the charter or leaving the details to the code is basically a kind of legislative policy thing that doesn't have any great significance in the way the law gets applied, if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. So, and what we're really talking about is, if the vacancy occurs during the period after a regular election until 181 days before the next election, then it should be filled by special election by mail-in voting. And
Right.
if the vacancy occurs more than 60 and up to 180 days before the next regular election, then council members must fill it by the majority within 45 days, with the public hearing in various parts of the city. So it goes into great detail here, and maybe there's something to be said for leaving it more general in the charter, but leaving the details in the other part. How do you feel about that?
Yeah, I would suggest that the council consider leaving the details to the code, because it's easier to amend the code if problems arise than to amend the charter. In other words, the procedure I'm suggesting is just to have a simple code, a simple charter amendment which refers you to the election code, chapter 8 of the city code, and in chapter 8 we would have a section which would give the details of how you go about filling a vacancy.
In chapter 8. Okay.
Right.
And how do you feel about that, just in terms of how you've reached this decision as a board?
Sure. Yes, this is Nicole Shong, Board of Elections member as well. I agree that if we're concerned about where to put details, amending the charter with all of the details may not be necessary, but certainly can be done in the code more easily and more readily. So I think we're basically in agreement here on the board.
Makes sense to me. So we'll take a vote on this, but I think my preference would be to follow the advice of the Board of Elections as far as drafting something. And of course, ultimately, we'll have to vote on this after it's published, public hearing, and that's the way it's going to go. Any comments from council? Mr. Roberts.
Thank you. Well, I think there is really a big difference in leaving the details either to the charter or the code, because if you have it in the charter and the council wants to change it, then the public can be involved if they want to. They can petition that to referendum. If they don't want that change, they can petition it. It's right now, the way the numbers are, it's almost impossible to petition it, but still the opportunity is there. But if we put the details in the code, then the council just can change it anytime they want, and the taxpayers, the citizens, the voters have no say in it. And I'm just of the opinion that the taxpayers and the voters should have a say in how people are elected to city council. So those details should not just be left up to the people who are elected, but they should be really left to the people that do the electing, which is the voters. So if it goes, to the code, there's no way I could vote for that. I'll vote to have the details in the charter, because I think the citizens deserve to be involved. And if you want to involve citizenry, you have to make that possible.
Well, thank you.
Mr. Mayor, if I could just briefly
please,
respond to
because
that.
either way, would it have to go to a but please go ahead.
Yeah, Mr. Mayor, any amendment of the election code has to have a public hearing. That's all I would say.
Okay.
Public hearing is not the same as being able to petition something to referendum and actually being able to affect the outcome.
It goes to referendum either way, right?
Yes. Let's take a few more comments from the public. Mr. Orleans, I believe you were next.
Some of us would prefer to adhere to the better practice of democracy. No one who holds elective office, I believe, and of course I'm full of it, so what does it matter that I believe this, but no one, I believe, who holds public office should be appointed to that public office, ever. It makes sense logistically that should there be a vacancy, and I will accept 60 days, prior to the next election, that the particular seat should be vacant. Not 180 days, but 60 days I will accept. An election to fill one seat or 2 seats is not that much more difficult than an election to fill 3 seats. And the charter now says that if there's a vacancy of 3 seats, there has to be a special election. I would like to see the charter amended so that there will always be a special election to fill any vacancy, and the code to represent that in its details. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And of course, these points we can kind of go back and forth in the public hearing and when the matter comes up on the agenda. But the purpose of this item really is to give council some direction. I think this is a big step forward in terms of defining what happens where we did not have much guidance at all in the past. This is much more structured. And as far as democracy, when you look at what's about to happen in Prince George's County with special elections, there's a chance we may have 3 or 4 special elections when the county executive, if she leaves before December 2nd, then there'd have to be a special election. And if a county council person fills that role, then their place would have to be filled, and there'd have to be a primary in each case. So that's going to be very expensive. And I'm not sure that democracy would really be furthered that much. I don't know. Mr. Hartman, please.
Michael Hartman, 2 Court Garden. I have 2 comments. First, in honor of our former mayor and mayor pro tem and council member Jay Davis, I propose in section 4B that the wording of the sentence, the council must hold a public hearing in each city area in East, Central, and West Greenbelt, that the word Greenbelt be moved so it's in front of the word East, so it reads Greenbelt East, Greenbelt Central, and Greenbelt West. My second comment is that there are a couple of circumstances where vacancies are filled by special election. And I propose that in elections where there are 3 or more candidates, the election will be conducted as a ranked choice election, and that ranked choice procedure will be triggered if no candidate receives 50% plus 1 votes. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. So once again, these are items that would come up in the public hearing and when the legislation is actually written. But for now, Mr. Samaron, do you have enough direction to proceed?
We do. So we will move forward with a charter amendment that points to the code, and all the details of the appointment, of the recommendation by the Board of Election will be reflected in the code, the election code itself.
Then I want to vote on it, so I want someone to make a motion so I can vote on it.
Make a motion.
It's
Mr.
not up
Roberts.
to the city staff. Thank you.
Question online as well, if I may read. It's from Jay Davis. Jay Davis.
You could still make a motion during discussion, but if you want to go ahead, please.
Okay, let me read this real quick. Which is easier to change if needed later, the code or the charter? That's from Jay Davis. The code, right?
That's right.
So, Mr. Roberts, did you want to make a motion?
No, I want someone else to make the motion because I know I'm not going to be in favor of it. I can make a motion that would suit me, but I know you're not going to vote for it. So you might as well make the motion so I can vote against it.
Okay. What's council member? Would you like to make that motion?
Well, I would move that we ask the Board of Elections to move forward with the first section 32 that just does the proposed charter amendments and then points to the city code.
Very good.
In Chapter 8.
Chapter 8 of the city code, correct.
Okay. Is there a second?
Second. Oh, no, go ahead. Third.
Is there any further discussion? If not, all in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
No.
Okay. The motion passes 5-1. Okay, well, moving on to item number 12. It's an item authorizing the city manager to execute a contract with Charles P. Johnson and Associates to prepare up to 15 storm drain easements. And this is based on a memo from our planning and community development director, Terry Ruby. Terry Ruby, welcome. Hey, in August of 1994, the county provided the city of Greenbelt with the Storm Drain Acceptance Program Phase 1 and Phase 2 report. The report identified storm drain systems that were accepted immediately for maintenance and others that required additional work, including easement research for 41 storm drain structures. Unfortunately, the easement-related work identified in the 1994 report was never completed, and therefore, the structures and systems were never accepted by the county. While the county has indicated that it has some capital funding to reimburse the city for the preparation of easements, staff do not believe it is sufficient to expeditiously complete all of the easement-related work needed to get all the public storm drain systems accepted by the county. As such, staff is recommending leveraging a portion of the American Rescue Plan Act funding allocated to storm drain infrastructure to assist with some of the easement work needed to address the recommendations and findings for the 1994 report. Ms. Ruby, welcome. Thank you for joining us this evening.
Thank you. So as you know, provided in the your council packet, backup memos, just sort of explaining, setting the stage for this work. We've been talking about it now for quite some time. It's a very important step, if you will, in order to negotiate with the county regarding them accepting responsibility for our older systems. So this, and along with what council approved on the consent agenda, we're doing a pilot, which will hopefully then save us time as we move through additional easement agreements. But in essence, we would, with most of these, we'll be working with GHI on identifying sort of a priority list because they've done a lot of assessments. They know where their major issues is. That's why we started with 4 Woodland Way. And as you can see, most of these older systems are within GHI. Some of them do extend onto private property parcels. So we would be having to work with those property owners too to get permission not only to go on to prepare the easement agreement, but then also to get their signature to grant that easement to the county. It's going to be a lot of learning as we go because the county has very specific criteria, if you will, for the width of easements, depending on the size of the system. We believe we will have some challenges, as we typically do with an historic greenbelt, in terms of ensuring that those easements do not have encumbrances on them, such as structures and so forth. So we'll be having to work very closely with the county in order to, if you will, identify what would be acceptable to them.
Well, thank you for that explanation. It's very, very helpful. So the American Rescue Plan Act funding explicitly set aside an allowance for funding to go for this purpose. So it's a very, and given the fact that we do not have the resources on our own to move forward with this, I think it's a great use of the money. And I think the funding issue is probably one of the reasons why it has not been acted on by staff in the past. It's an expensive proposition, the assessments and whatnot. So there is a map. There's an attachment which
there's
lists.
a list of those systems that were identified back in the early 90s that are in need of easement or research and believed to be needed to execute easements. So that will be the list that we'll be working off of. And this aligns very well, if you will, with the mapping funding that you also provided as part of ARPA funding. So they'll really be going hand in hand. So as we map the systems, we'll identify easements needed or easements that we have. And then at a future meeting, we do have some additional monies Public Works will be bringing to you to a tool that will help us also to assess the conditions of some of these systems so we can identify those as we map those, because I think that'll be very important information for us to have to share with the county as we take on the conversation about them assuming responsibility.
Okay, and finally, so why this particular list? Are these actually the highest priorities? Because there are 41 in all, and these are.
No, my understanding is this list was derived when GHI, the city of Greenbelt, and the county, all three partnered to do an assessment of our storm drain systems in an effort to get them accepted by the county. And these were the ones that were not accepted by the county because they needed more easement research and easements executed.
Go ahead.
When was that? When did we do that? I remember.
The study started in 92. The report, I believe, is dated 1994. So it's been some time.
Quite some time, yeah.
And so the list includes the site at the underpass next to the gas station and the apartments. Is that one of the sites?
I believe if it's 50, around 51, it's part of that system is referenced in here. And if you recall, we also used ARPA money to do an assessment of that system as well. So I have identified, what we knew already, that it's an undersized system and $1 million+ project, if you will, if we were to size it. But we're also looking at other opportunities within the watershed as well to address stormwater, to reduce those flows.
Very good, very good. Ms. Pope and other questions from council?
30 years, so do you think we need to maybe go back and recheck it, or?
Well, the easements won't change. If they didn't
Add-
have easements then, we haven't executed any easements since.
Or add
And after
anything?
1994, that's when the program started, and my understanding is that's when counties started accepting our systems as they were constructed. So this wouldn't change. The one thing that's going to change is back then, there was a commitment for the county to assume responsibility for those systems that were not constructed to their standards. That question remains open, and we'll realize the reality of that conversation when we bring these easements on whether they will require the city to bring those systems up to standards. If they do, obviously, then we're looking at a significant investment in their infrastructure, and we'll have to then have discussions regarding possible funding and so forth.
Funding, yeah, okay, thank you.
Other questions from council? Okay. So we have a comment, Mr. Orleans.
Thank you. First, there's an obvious question. Why was this work, or why was the 1994 report never completed? I mean, that's a glaring question. I don't know why we're not talking about that tonight. Somebody was on city council then. Somebody was in charge of city management then. Why was it never done? And then there's a second question. Staff does not believe that it is sufficient to expeditiously complete all the easement work, related work needed to get the public storm drain systems accepted by the county using the identified funds, capital funding that the county has offered. I'd like to have a better understanding of that. Can you answer both questions?
I can't answer to why the recommendations of the study were not implemented. I don't have the history regarding that. In terms of the funding, the county has very limited funding to invest in the storm drain municipality acceptance program. So that's why we're suggesting that we work together and leverage those funds so that we can more, as indicated, expeditiously get these executed, because then we can get them accepted into the county's program, which is really important, because that's when then they will be eligible for capital improvement funding, and we can work with the county to have funding allocated to these systems.
That makes sense to me. Just so with these the funds from the county, is it the same pool of funds the county would be using to accept new infrastructure into the responsibility, like
Now,
new
this is
developments?
monies that were set aside, and I'm trying to get clarity on exactly what that amount is currently, that they would be setting aside to assist in reimbursement of easement agreements.
Okay.
They
thank you.
enter in, I believe, to now as they accept programs, new infrastructure, that funding is a separate piece of the puzzle.
Mr. Summerall.
Yes, as what the funding set aside is for reimbursement of the easements. We expect to use those funds for securing the additional easements that are needed. So we won't be able to do all of them under this contract, but we hope to use the funds that they set aside for additional easements.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. Do we need to vote on this to take action? Please.
I was going to make a motion.
To accept the recommendations?
Yeah. I move that council accept the recommendations and authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Charles P. Johnson and Associates to prepare up to 15 easement agreements at a cost not to exceed $59,962.50.
I'll second that. Discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Ruby. Thank you. So, item number 13 is proposed policy for processing Little Free Library placement request. And this agenda item is based on a memorandum from Jamie Fear on November the 13th, 2024. This summer, the staff received a new request to install a Little Free Library on public property, and staff would like to formalize the policy that will guide the process for the current request and subsequent requests going forward. Based on staff research and consultation with the city solicitor, staff has drafted an application that will be handled at staff level to process requests for Little Free Libraries on city property, and upon approval, the city would issue an applicant a conditional construction permit. Ms. Fear, welcome. It's so nice to see you today.
Good to see you.
So tell us a little bit about the application process, and more so about the research that you've done. So in the past, have people come to the city, or have there been, I think there probably been a few situations where folks just went ahead and put one up. So what did you find out in your research?
Sure. So this research was actually started a couple of years ago, and I have some of the details that were documented in previous draft memos. What I do know is that if you're installing a Little Free Library on private property, I don't think that there's necessarily been communication with the city about those. So this is specifically about folks who have built a Little Free Library. Often it's a scouting project, I think, something like that. And excuse me if I cough. But they don't have the yard space or whatever the situation might be, that they're interested in installing it on city property. And so the city does have a couple of those. In the past, the process has been either entering an easement agreement, which is a much more complicated process, or through issuing a conditional construction permit to the applicant. But there wasn't a formal application procedure. And so there are some registered Little Free Libraries across the city, both on public and private property. But now we've gotten another request. We anticipate that it won't be the last one. And we thought that it would be great to kind of close the loop on this and formalize that process with the application. And so what we are recommending, and again with the guidance of the city solicitor, is that that application, part of the questions on there, essentially turn into conditions that would go into a construction permit, and that we would then issue that construction permit. And in working with the city solicitor, we've added language that protects the city. Maintenance in filling the library remain the responsibility of the applicant. Any vandalism that happens to the Little Free Library, that would be the responsibility of the applicant to clean up. Not that we anticipate it, but any kind of maintenance like that would be their responsibility. And if at any time, for whatever reason, the city deemed that the Little Free Library needed to be removed, we would have that ability as well. And we would work closely with recreation, probably, if it's on a recreation site, or with any other departments, depending on where we might want to site them. We don't have an official list right now. We'd love to see them kind of sited equitably across the city. We do see more requests for Greenbelt Center City. And so the current request actually would tentatively be placed on the playground by St. Hugh's.
Oh, okay. Well, we love our books in Greenbelt, especially free ones. So would there be a limit to the number of free libraries? Like, could you have one on every block?
That is a great question. Right now, we don't have a limit. I think what we anticipate is that we would amend the policy if suddenly we feel like we are overrun with Little Free Libraries, which I don't anticipate happening.
It's going to happen.
There's still pretty significant, investment to purchase the materials and build them and register them, and then knowing that you have to go through the process and commit to maintaining them. So I don't think that would be the issue. I think we just would like to help guide perhaps where they're placed, although understanding that people who are maintaining them like to be near them. That makes it easier. So
it's true. And so would the building standards, would they have to follow Euclidean planning principles?
We do want them to be sturdy. I don't think they have to follow like international building code code or green code. Although if we could get, one with a green roof, that might be really neat, but that is not a requirement. More so that we are looking at, again, that maintenance responsibility, as well as, I want to get the language right. We would be looking in the application, there are some more open-ended questions that aren't necessarily the conditions, that we would be getting information on the safety, accessibility, durability, ease of maintenance on those, and kind of help guide those. I feel like often when we've gotten the requests, I don't have the history on all of them, it's already been built. So we don't necessarily have control over that, but we ask for pictures and if they had the schematics that they built it on and what materials they used.
Be a cost?
What's that?
Would there be a cost to file this information?
No cost to the applicant, other than, I mean, their cost is in building and maintaining, but no cost for the application, just that we need all of the information that's required. Actually, I'm sorry, is there a cost for the permit? No, okay.
Ms. Pope?
Yeah, I was going to ask the same if there's going to be a cost, but I think it's a good idea to have, I was just going over your application that is on here. I think it's fair to say that, it should be a standardized situation throughout the city. And I'm not so sure if you can maybe request certain locations now, because a lot of times people want to have them in their neighborhood. And I like these little free libraries. I utilize them all the time. I even go to my son's house and in your neighborhood, and I go to those too, because I just think it's a great idea, and it's, if residents want to do that, I think that's just wonderful. So yeah, maybe a few solar panels so you can see better. It's dark.
That would also be really neat, yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's see, Councilmember McKinney.
Thank you. Just a quick question. I know that there had been some conversation about potentially putting a free library in the Central Park area of Greenbelt Station. Can you just clarify who would be responsible for that, since that is city property? And because I'm assuming that would be probably the better location, because there's not really yards in Greenbelt Station. So who would ultimately be responsible for maintaining that?
The applicant would be, so this application is for anyone who wants to put their privately built little free library onto public property. So if someone does want to put one in that park, the maintenance would still be the responsibility of the applicant.
Okay, and then just to follow up, so there probably should be potentially some guidance if that neighborhood has an HOA as well, because there's probably some design guidelines for that neighborhood that would go through that too. So I don't know if that's also built in to the process. Because I know we have guidelines on what we can put up in certain areas in our neighborhood that relate to the HOA. So someone just can't go and build their own thing
Right.
in the area.
Well,
But I'm
typically,
wondering
folks-
if we wouldn't have to do that because it's in the Central Park. It's not HOA land, it's actually it's the city's land.
I believe so. I don't think that the question around HOAs had come up specifically in our research, but I think because it's on city property, we would be reviewing the plans and the build. A lot of them look very similar. I mean, there are differences in the models, but they are often following a pattern that's been vetted. I don't know if it will look like the homes in Greenbelt Station. Sometimes they do, which is really cute too. But I think because it's on public property, it wouldn't necessarily be subject to those HOA standards. And it's
So-
not a building. It's
Right.
not, it's, yeah.
Okay.
So I'll go ahead and make a motion to approve this application and the conditional permitting process for installation of LFLs on public property that enables staff to work directly with applicants on the approval or disapproval of each application?
Second.
Second. So, Councilmember McKinney brought up an interesting point. It seems to me that the request would be made or applications by residents in adjacent property. So in this case, it's adjacent to a condo association or HOA's property, the request would have to come through the condo association or the HOA. So that because a resident couldn't really ask to, maybe they could put a little free library 3 or 4 blocks down from where they live. These are requests, adjacent to the property owners.
No, they're
property.
typically not. I mean, the folks who are requesting the current one don't live adjacent to St. Hugh's, but that is one location that we identified and actually was not their first choice. So they're not always directly adjacent to the properties, but they might be nearby enough so that they can maintain and keep the little free library filled.
Feel that the motion that's on the floor that's seconded adequately addresses the concern that Councilmember McKinney brought up?
I guess I'm not sure about the HOA question. I'm going to.
If you might, just thinking to pop in, I'm wondering if there needs to be some sort of language in there that basically says there needs to be some recognition if there are any design guidelines that a HOA has put forth, if the free library is going in a property that is within a neighborhood that there are style guides around.
I would just be cautious of that because I don't want to send the message that all of our improvements as a city that we do, that we're going to abide, if you will, by HOA regulations. They're really intended for the individual property yards and individual property owners. We don't typically apply HOA standards, architectural standards, and so forth to city-owned properties or indoor or improvements within on those properties. So that would be my caution there. That wasn't our intent to do that.
Yeah.
So we can
But
certainly.
in this case, it wouldn't be on an individual's property.
No, it would be on city-owned property though.
Right.
That's so subject to city standards. And we don't typically imply private standards or HOA condominium standards, GHI standards on city land that's adjacent to, say, those properties. We have our own standards, if you will. In here, really the standards we're looking at is just constructability in terms of the footing and things like that. We don't have any architectural, if you will. We will review it, obviously, just to make sure that it's an appropriate design and so forth. And the Little Free Library Organization has a lot of resources on their page in terms of guiding, decisions in terms of what they should look like, what they should be made of, durability, maintenance, locations. Our first priority typically is to work with them to try to get them on HOA or privately owned property because it's easier for everybody, quite frankly. But if we can't, sometimes we can't do that, and that's when we then work with them to put it on public land.
Okay.
Thank you. I appreciate it. I love the free library. I would love to see one all around various areas and communities in the city, including Greenbelt Station. I just want to make sure that there's some guidelines that if people are requesting it, that it is not some format that really doesn't meet the even if it's a historical feel in a neighborhood, it doesn't meet the style that the neighborhood would want it to look like. So I'm just wanting to make sure that it's not outside of that. And if the free library in the association, there's guidelines around that so that people can build to that, I think that will be helpful. And if we can guide them to that in the application process, I think we're probably okay.
Yeah, I suppose if there was some reference to consulting with stakeholders in the application or in the process, that would probably satisfy the council member's request. Does that make sense?
We can certainly put something if you reside with the HOA that we would ask that you would share your plans with the HOA.
Right, or in the case next to St. Hughes, maybe just consulting with St. Hughes to make sure that they're okay with it.
If that's the will of council, that was not our intent.
Oh, okay, okay. Yeah.
I
so
think that may
we're kinda-
complicate matters.
I think, I was just
Yeah.
gonna say that too. I think this complicates things a little bit. I think maybe the HOA itself maybe want to meet with their stakeholders and maybe come up with, you know, maybe guidelines if someone would want to have a public, a little public library on that, on Greenbelt's, on the city property. So maybe go that route. But I think we don't want to make it so complicated that people don't want to do it, because I think the libraries really add a great value to us. And it's just a great addition, so.
Councilmember Niesel.
I just have one note, and that is under the little yes checks. It says that I understand that in the event that I or a secondary project lead move or no longer wish to be responsible for this Little Free Library, I must provide an alternate contact. There's no mention of a secondary project lead in the application, so can we just like strike that? In the event that I move or no longer wish to be responsible, I must provide an alternate project lead. Please and thank you.
Sorry, yes, I'm just trying to find that.
It's third from the bottom in the checks.
Do we want to put a provision in there
And what
for
was the
blighted
provision? I'm
little
sorry.
libraries removal?
That
No?
I understand that in the event that I move or no longer wish to be responsible for this Little Free Library, I must provide an alternate and then just use responsible party, which is the same language that you used above.
Okay.
Okay, well, I'll accept that as a friendly amendment. Second, Ms. Pope, do you?
Yes, I of course second it, but, so you just said something, now I escaped. So if the libraries would be like falling apart, you notice, and who's gonna check on it? Is Public Works gonna go around and make sure that they're okay, that they look proper and are well taken care of? And what's gonna happen if they're not? Are we gonna take them down, or?
Yes, we will take them down
The
if they're
city's
not.
gonna take them down?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so once again, the motion was to,
I was going to say that I'm not concerned with how we find out whether they're deteriorating. I'm sure our staff
we'll
will
find out.
will find it, or residents will let us know.
And we would hope that it doesn't get to that point. I mean,
Right.
if we notice something is starting to fail on it, we will have then record of who the contact is, and we'll get in touch with them. Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you.
yes, you had a comment, please.
I think a clarification needs to be made between HOA property and private property within the HOA and Greenbelt property, because common areas within an HOA are still under the jurisdiction or whatever you want, or the responsibility of the HOA. And if somebody wants to put a free library up on a traffic island in an HOA, then it's up to the HOA to say whether they can do it or not. And I think from a lot of HOA bylaws that they haven't even thought of something like that, because when they were written, those bylaws for a lot of the HOA properties, free libraries, little free libraries weren't even around. So anything that is within the HOA property, whether it's privately owned by a homeowner or not, is still HOA under the HOA governance. And so that's not, strictly speaking, Greenbelt in the first place. It would be the HOA in the first place. And that needs to be clarified.
Well, in our case, in Bell Point, we don't have any public roads. Everything that's everything, as soon as you enter Bell Point, then that's all ours. So there wouldn't be no public road. So even in the island, if somebody would put something there, that would be up to the HOA. Now, some of the other developments, like Greenbelt Station, the park in the middle is public land. It doesn't belong to
okay.
the HOA.
I see.
It belongs to us.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and the same concerns would also apply to any multifamily unit, the apartment developments that we have. But for the sake of being explicit, we're just talking about public property. So once again, I'll move, restate, this is a motion to approve the application and conditional permitting process for the installation of little free libraries on public property that enables staff to work directly with applicants on the approval or disapproval of each application. And within the application, there's an amendment to name a secondary person who's responsible. Is that it? And that's acceptable to the seconder?
Yep, yes, yes.
Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Hey, thank you so much. Do you need any additional guidance from staff? Or I'm sure that Mr. Summerone can, kind of follow up and keep council informed on the process. But thanks for working through this.
Thank you.
Yeah. Little free libraries prosper and thrive and multiply throughout the city.
They're great. I love it. Don't you use it? Yeah, of course.
Okay, item number 14 is an item that would authorize the city manager to execute a contract with VMP Construction Company Incorporated for paving of the multi-use path between Greenbrook Drive and Schramm Hills Park. And this is from a memorandum prepared by Jamie Fear on the 14th. So this contract utilizes a portion of the American Rescue Plan Act funds to allocate it for pedestrian and bicycle master plan implementation and improvements. Staff proposes that the City Council authorize the city manager to execute a contract with Next Day Concrete for asphalt construction services for a total of $36,950. This includes $19,000 previously approved by council for the installation of 2 new raised crosswalks and amends the quote to also include $17,915 to pave the multi-use path adjacent to Hanover Parkway between Greenbrook Drive and Schramm Hills Park. This would replace council's previous approval of a contract with VMP not to exceed $20,000, and it's going to allow the city to utilize American Rescue Plan Act funds to complete asphalt work in support of pedestrian and bicycle master plan implementation improvements. So, Planner Fear, here you are again.
Here I am.
Yeah. Hey, thanks for this proposal. Some people may not be aware of where Greenbrook Drive is in relation to Hanover Parkway and Schramm Hills Park. I don't know if there's a map. Can we put the map up on the screen?
Real quick, as the map is coming up, which is in the memo, I just realized there is a typo in the agenda comments, and it first mentions Next Day Concrete, which is another contractor we've been working with, but not the one that will be working on this, and it should say VMP throughout the agenda comments.
Okay. So
here's Hanover Parkway is the main road that's mostly north-south there. And the intersection at the very top of the image, that's Greenbrook Drive. So this pathway doesn't actually go all the way there, but that's the closest intersection.
Right.
What I've marked here with the red ovals, the top red oval is the northern end of the gravel path. The bottom red oval is the southern end of the gravel path. So it is paved north and south of those ovals, but that about 1,000 linear feet segment is not paved. And then there's also a side path that takes folks to the steps that take them down to the bus stop on Hanover Parkway, and a portion of sidewalk, which is a part of another project that we're working on. And so
Right.
all of that would be paved, so that it's continuously paved up through the end of the current path.
Yeah, each year the Tour-a-Date Greenbelt bike ride goes throughout the city. And as we leave Schramm Hills Park, we actually go down that protected area. But because of the gravel, it's a little bit hard for some cyclists to manage that. Also, when it rains, the gravel tends to create ruts. So for pedestrians as well, it's an improvement. So those two areas, those are the only two areas that would be paved, and they're connecting to the other ones, or does it actually circle around the stormwater management pond?
It does not circle around the stormwater management pond. It would be the linear path from that southern end up to the northern end. So it would connect the multi-use path that goes almost all the way to Good Luck Road there up to Greenbrook, which is where it ends right now.
Yeah, and the reason why I mentioned the stormwater management pond is when we were working with Clean Water Partners to complete that project, one of the things that we did in fact talk about was improving that connection through that area. So this is something that's in line with what had been discussed previously. Are there any questions or comments about this? Yes,
I just think it's
council member.
great to close that gap. I think that's going to make that path so much more pedestrian friendly and usable for cyclists. So glad to see it.
Okay. So it's an ARPA project, so we're going to constrain these funds as soon as possible. But we've got so much work. So when do you think VMP would actually be able to begin and complete the project?
I imagine it would probably be in the spring, but if it happens before then, that's wonderful. And I did want, because I know Mr. Kim has many projects that they are also working on. So, but I wanted to also point out, the council previously approved to authorize the city manager to execute a contract with VMP for $20,000 for the 2 raised crosswalks on Ridge. This $39,000 or $36,950 actually includes those raised crosswalks, so that initial approval is canceled out. Those crosswalks show up for $19,000 on this new proposal, and then the paving of the path is $17,950. So it isn't in addition to that previous $20,000. It replaces that previous $20,000 and is the 2 projects in one quote. So I just
Okay,
wanna
and that's the
clarify
2
that.
raised crosswalks on Ridge.
Correct.
Questions, comments?
Let's make a motion.
Someone like to make a motion?
Sure. I move that the city council authorize the city manager to execute a contract with VMP for asphalt construction services totaling for a total of $36,950 to include $19,000 previously approved by council for the installation of 2 new raised crosswalks, and amend the quote to also include $17,950 to pave the multi-use path adjacent to Hanover Parkway between Greenbrook Drive and Schramm Hills Park.
Second.
Ms. Pope has seconded. Is there any additional discussion? Hearing none, let's go ahead and take a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you, Ms. Fair.
Thank you.
Okay, and the next item, number 15, is also an American Rescue Plan fund. This is to authorize the city manager to execute contracts for the American Rescue Plan Act project ball field renovations for Schramm Hills Park, multipurpose field, and Braden Athletic Complex. So approximately $2.35 million in American Rescue Plan Act funds was designated for ball field improvement projects. $350,000 of that amount was reserved for the purchase of equipment that would allow staff to better maintain the city's athletic ball fields. The remaining funds will allow for significant improvements to the playing conditions and infrastructure at the Braden Field Complex and Schramm Hills Park. This project encompasses a variety of elements and trades, but the majority of the construction budget can be fulfilled with the approval of contracts from 3 vendors. Mr. Varda, welcome. I'll go ahead and read through this if you like. Capital Sports Fields has submitted quotes totaling $1,169,480.05, which includes a 15% contingency to take on the bulk of the work related to improving playing field conditions. The Capital Sports Field quote is based on pricing from a writable contract with the City of Rockville. At Schramm Hills Park, the multi-purpose field will be scalped, graded, and sodded with Bermuda grass. That's Bermuda grass, which is the best natural alternative to synthetic turf for playing surfaces. In addition, an irrigation system would be installed to allow for proper watering, a key factor in protecting the health of the new grass surface. The Braden Field Complex work will include removal and replacement of infield sod, regrading, refabricating the pitcher's mound and batter's box, and installing new infield soil mix. Musco Sports Lighting has submitted quotes totaling $394,835. Musco is a premier agency in sports lighting field, and the quoted prices are based on a Keystone Purchasing Network contract. The Keystone Purchasing Network is a cooperative purchasing program that solicits bids on behalf of public agencies. Musco would provide a retrofit system for the light poles serving Braden 1 baseball football field that would convert the existing lights to LED. Additionally, the 8 existing light poles serving Braden 2 would be replaced with only 4 new poles. The new LED lights would result in an estimated 50% energy saving and reduce light spillage and glare, and qualify for significant energy rebates. Additionally, all lights could be operated remotely rather than relying on a traditional on-off switch. And finally, Long Fence has submitted quotes totaling $164,700 to address fencing and dugout needs related to the ball field improvement project. Long Fence has an established relationship with the city for fence installation and is on the negotiable purchase list. A fence which will be installed around the perimeter of Schramm Hills Park multipurpose field, and that's going to be installed there. And this fence will allow staff to better control access, preventing damage caused by unpermitted groups and ultimately protecting the investment into improving the playing surface. At the Braden Field Complex, Long Fence could replace the existing outfield fence on Braden Field 2, which is being shortened by 50 feet as the field is converted from softball to Little League dimensions. Additionally, 4 new dugouts would be installed to serve Braden Field number 1 and Braden Field number 2. So staff is recommending that council authorize city manager to execute these contracts totaling $1,729,729,024.05. Mr. Varda, thank you so much for putting forth this information. These are very, very big projects that the city would have been unable to execute on its own. It's through the American Rescue Plan funding that we're able to undertake these improvements that would actually help the playability of these surfaces. And this has been an ongoing, long existing concern. One of the reasons why some of our baseball teams, sports teams, play in other locations is because of the conditions of the outfield there at Braden Field. And Schramm Hills Park is just utilized so heavily that it's very, very difficult to maintain those fields. So you want to talk a little bit about the timeline? I know that we'd hoped to get started on these projects a little bit earlier, so let me just stop talking. And Mr. Varda, please.
Certainly. We are behind what we were anticipating. We were hoping the work would start this past summer. If this gets approved tonight, I'll circle back tomorrow with our project manager. I brought a contract in front of you months ago to hire CPJ as the contract manager for this project. So we'll circle back with them, connect them with the contractors, and then we'll get a better timeline as to when's the project, certainly the field condition project, can start. It's my understanding that the light project can take place almost immediately once the contracts are signed. And then the fence, the fencing at Schramm Hills Park would probably be installed just before the sod is laid, because we don't want to have anybody playing on it while the sod is going down. And then the removal of the existing fence on Braden, shortening that by 50 feet, could happen pretty much at any time as well. So we'll have a better understanding of the timeline once we circle back with the project managers, and they'll need to work out the work with the contractors.
Ms. Pope?
Yes, so I'm very excited to see this on tonight's agenda because it's long overdue.
Yes.
And this is a very exciting project, and I know it really needs to be done. I mean, it's been many years that we were talking about it to redo our fields, so this is a good opportunity. So I would like to move that City Council authorize the city manager to execute the 3 contracts totaling $1,729,024.05 to significantly improve conditions at Schramm Hills Park and Braden Field Complex.
Second.
Okay, Councilmember Pompey has seconded. A little bit of discussion. So first, we've got the 15% contingency on the work, and this is probably going to take about a year. With all the projects combined, it's going to take about a year. So is 15% going to be enough? Is it likely to come in under budget? What do you think?
Yeah, we think 15% contingency will cover any unforeseen issues. If we get to the end of the project and we haven't used that money, there's other steps or phases to the project where we can divert that money to handle the other phases part of the project as well. So it's hard to tell. There's a lot of moving pieces to this project. I'm sure we're going to run into some things that are unexpected. So, but we think the 15% would cover that.
Okay, now one of my stickler points recently has been about trying to put something in the contract that would not dissuade contractors from bidding, but at the same time would give us a little more certainty or disincentive for a contractor to take on a project and then have it take much longer than was planned. Is there any way to do that with any aspects of this contract?
I think that could get complicated. I don't think a lot of these contractors are hurting for work. We are up against a tight timeline. These have to be under contract before the end of the year. We have communicated with the contractors that the projects need to be completed by the end of 2026. But I think after talking with Capital Sports Field, the plan is to start probably March of this year, as soon as the weather breaks, where they can actually start laying some sod, like in April, May. So I'm not too concerned about that, but yeah, I'd have to circle back with the city manager to see if there's any language we could put into the contracts to cover us on that. I'm not sure what that would be.
I understand. So the project would start in March, and after the sod was laid, it's going to take a little time. So
Yeah.
those fields will probably not be available. It'll probably take a year. Is that correct?
Probably, yes. Yeah.
Maybe
The
longer.
fields will not be playable. If we start in March, I don't think the fields will probably be playable till next spring.
Okay.
But I will tell you, the stakeholders are very excited about this project. They're willing to take a season without being able to play here, knowing that when they come back, they're going to have a much, much better facility, not only for the players, but for the spectators as well.
Yeah, I know that's true. Greenbelt Soccer, for example, probably would want to schedule some of their activities here in Greenbelt.
Yes.
Finally, I was just wondering, with the Schramm Hills fence, installing that fence, that's going to be a permanent fence?
That'll be a permanent fence. It'll be 8 feet high. It'll circle the field. There'll be gates, maintenance gates and walkway gates. We will manage play on that field just like we manage our gym. We'll have open time for families or free play, and we'll have permitted times for Greenbelt groups. And if possible, we'll have to think this through a little bit, but we might be able to even have some rental space there as well. But the big thing is we want to protect the field. We want to protect the surface.
Councilmember Niesel.
Yes, I did have a question about Schramm, particularly for the soccer team. They asked me if we had ever considered lighting over there, and I was just wondering what the considerations are as to why that wasn't.
You know, many years ago, we talked about lighting that field. The initial plan, the 2.3 million, actually, when we started the ARPA putting all their plans together was for a synthetic turf field and lighting that field. The synthetic turf field didn't get very far, so we had to circle back and figure out because if we could have done that, that means every group could have played there. They couldn't even have baseball practice there. So we had to circle back and figure out what can be equitable for all the groups. So it came down to enhancing Braden Field and fixing the conditions of Schramm Hills Park. So we really couldn't spend everything at Schramm Hills just for one group. So we wanted to kind of equitably share the cost with all the stakeholders.
Okay. Other questions? Kind of have mixed feelings about the fence around Schramm. I know we have to protect the turf, but I think an 8-foot fence is going to take a little bit away from the aesthetics, the beauty of the trees over there and whatnot, and just the feeling of accessibility. So that would be all the way around to the what do you call that building there? The clubhouse.
Clubhouse, yeah. It would encompass the entire field.
Okay, and it would end right there at the clubhouse.
It would circle. The fence will go when you're up toward the parking lot. It'll go along the sidewalk, close to the sidewalk, so nobody gets hit with a ball, kicking to the soccer goal. I would recommend not doing the project if we could not control access to the field, because it will get destroyed in a matter of a day. Because people, the people that don't have a permit, they don't care if the field's wet. They just want to play their game. So we have to control access to this field.
Let's see, Ms. Pope?
Yeah, I agree with that because we have large groups playing on those fields, and anyone can just go and play. Yeah. And I think we're spending a good amount of money to really put in a lot of work and make this a field that our teams, our residents can play on, and I think that's important. Unfortunately, we have to fence it. It's unfortunate, but this is the only way we can protect it, because the amount of the cost of all this work is just so high that we just can't go out and say, well, we're just gonna redo it in 2 years. We just can't afford that.
Okay, let's see, Mr. Orleans, I believe you had your hand up first, and Mr. Hartman.
Bill Orleans. Aside from the fact that I believe the city has wholly misused its ARPA funding, I don't know that I would have been opposed to using approximately 10% of the total ARPA funding for the renovation of ball fields. I don't know that I would have been opposed to that, except that we probably shouldn't be using the money that way. However, I quickly skimmed the respective documents from these three vendors and did not see what I thought was going to be a standard stipulation in any contract executed with a vendor by the city of Greenbelt that they're going to be paying a livable wage. For several contracts in a row now, I have seen that stipulation. I did not see it in any of these three contracts. And it might have just been my quick reading of it, but I didn't see it.
It's not on, there's an oversight on staff. We're now requiring all vendors to sign a living wage document. And given that it's opera funded, it has to be prevalent wages anyway. But thank you, Mr. Orleans. We'll work on that.
Okay, Mr. Hartman?
Michael Hartman, 2 Court Garden. I have a related question. Are AEDs situated in all of these ball fields? And like Braden has both the ball field and the tennis pickleball courts. And do we have AEDs there? Because it seems like if people are going to be exerting themselves, that would be a great place to place AEDs if that's possible.
Thank you. I was wondering about that myself, particularly over by Braden Field. Is there an ADA at the youth center?
There is an AED at the youth center, yes.
Sorry.
Yeah. But we do not have them located on athletic complexes or parks. Something
Be
we've talked
indoors, right?
about. I think it came down to actually the maintenance or
I can
the
jump in.
AED and making sure that it was usable. Somehow we're trying to work this out.
We explored the possibility of having outdoor installed cabinets for the AEDs, and there was a concern about maintenance of the outdoor enclosures. Given the need for the AEDs in other facilities, we move forward in putting those in those facilities right away, and we have AEDs. The park rangers still carrying one.
Park rangers carry one in the park ranger car. Yes.
Yes. So we have the park rangers carrying one, the officers carrying. We now have 4 patrol units with AEDs. So we took a different path. We put them in facilities we can control and folks that are mobile. Mm-hmm.
That's an improvement, yeah. Any other comments, thoughts to share? Yes, please.
Robert Goldberg Strassler, 114 Lasner Lane. Just a quick question to Greg. Will you be doing any improvements of the ball field at Shram Hills?
This project does not include specific improvements to the baseball field. However, the $350,000 that Public Works used to purchase equipment is going to be used to improve the existing surfaces that aren't getting revamped. So they will improve the surface of the baseball field and the football field by aerating, backfilling, overseeding, things like that. So it will get improved. It's just not part of this specific contract.
Thank you, thank you. Yes, Mr.
I just wanted to ask if Long Fence would be the only contractor consulted as to price, because I do know from personal experience that they are rather on the pricey side, and there might be another company that could do an equally good job, but at a considerably lower rate. And could that still be considered at this point?
As Greg mentioned, when we're looking at our contracts, there's Long Fence. The city has a long-standing relationship with Long Fence, and they've been a reputable and reliable partner. Given the sensitivity of the timing and all the things that we need to do, this was identified as the best option. Greg, is there anything you want to add?
And they're on the negotiated purchase list as well. So in essence, it is a rideable contract.
Mr. Hartman.
I apologize for going far afield, no pun intended, but it's been mentioned several times that the AEDs are in the park ranger cars and in police vehicles. Is there a centralized way to put out an alert to the nearest AED, whether it's a park ranger car or a police car or whatever? Do you have a way of tracking these? Because a lot of times when people are in distress, even seconds count. And I'm wondering if you've developed a way to figure out where they are at any one time, so that the closest vehicle with an AED in it, or the closest building or whatever, they know where to call them from. So just thought of that.
I don't think, it seems like 311 or 911 should or could have that capacity. I don't think that's in place at this time, but, if you call 911 and you get the Greenbelt Volunteer Fire and Rescue Squad, and if we had enough personnel to man that facility full time, they would they would dispatch the closest ambulance. What do you think about that, Josue?
I think of what Josh Forney did to save a life, and the quick thinking of the victim themselves, what ultimately led to saving his life, to have the foresight to know that the county fire department would take longer than the police department to respond to him and help him. That was some powerful insights for that individual to have. That as the manager, I see a lot of gaps in our delivery of service that we can't easily fill those in. So if somebody calls 911 for a fire and medical emergency, that's going to be a county dispatch. So it's not a Greenbelt Police Department dispatch. I think our police dispatchers would know, oh, someone's next to the youth center, or would have a good understanding of where our resources are located and could quickly identify or find a way to dispatch those resources. We do not have that same level of coordination with the county dispatch. We do for police services. They're really good at coordinating police services for the entire county. So there's a good synergy there. But for some of these things, as Mr. Hartman's bringing up, I don't see an easy way to do that. There are ways we can do that, but it requires folks to know the systems that are in place. For example, our AEDs are registered equipment. We could also put them on the Pulse Point app, so folks that are using those applications can identify them. But that's one more thing other people to use, so the folks that are having that emergency to know where to look for them. What we can do is we have put out information on where AEDs are located in the city, and we can put that in circulation on a more regular basis. Maybe once a month, we're putting out a summary of our emergency services and where things are located and whatnot. I think we can do that. And, if we can get it in front of people so many times, it'll help them remember where these resources are. I think that those are things that are within our scope.
Those are good suggestions. I know around some of the recreational fields, there are kiosk or billboards, and perhaps we can find a way to post some of the AED locations on these billboards. Like there's a kiosk at Brayton Field, and having played tennis for so many years, I've seen 2 or 3 people who passed away from heart attacks and not really knowing exactly where to go. So it's good to know that you head over there to the youth center. That's the closest AED. Hey, let's take the vote. If there's no further questions, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Opposed? That motion carries. Thank you. So item number 16. It's an agenda item to authorize the city manager to execute contract for the Greenbelt Station Central Park shaded tables. Game Time, which is doing business as Cunningham Recreation, has submitted a quote for $86,153.64 to supply and install 2 additional shade structures in the lower section of Greenbelt Station's Central Park area. The shade structures will be similar design to the existing shade structures, but will be larger and incorporate dining tables or picnic tables, including 1 ADA accessible table under each shade. The quoted prices are based upon a writable OMNIA Partners contract. The OMNIA Partners simplifies procurement for state and local governments through a lead public agency contracting model that ensures all of their cooperative contracts are compliant with public purchasing regulations and are competitively solicited to improve efficiency in the procurement process for participating agencies. Cunningham Recreation provided the initial shade structure installations at Greenbelt Station Central Park and is on the negotiated purchase list as a longtime supplier and builder of city recreation amenities. Plans for the additional shade structures have been shared with and approved by Greenbelt Station Board of Directors. So staff recommends City Council authorize the city manager to execute the purchase and installation of these shade structures by Cunningham Recreation in Greenbelt Station Central Park, not to exceed $86,153.64. Mr. Varda.
Yep.
Thank you for bringing this forward. I'm wondering, with the shade structures, once again, we've just got so many contracts coming up. What would be the timeline for the construction of these structures?
I would hope they'd be in this spring. I don't want to overpromise and underdeliver, so spring, summer.
Okay.
Yeah.
And with these contracts and proposals, they came through with the public input. It's sort of the outcome of the public engagement with
Yes.
the
We did a study with Neighborhood
Development Center.
So this is part of that project, though we're doing another community outreach to talk about the Indian Creek Park area. So that's going to be a whole nother project that Terry is working on. So this is
Okay.
just the lower level of the Central Park area.
Okay, so is this the last part of this the work from the Environmental Design Center recommendations? Excluding the Indian Creek Trail portion.
That's correct. Yes.
Okay. Questions? Councilmember McKinney, are you there?
I am here. I just want to thank Mr. Varda and his team for continuing to move this forward. There was a good amount of input from Greenbelt Station residents, and I'm really happy that they've had a chance to weigh in, and those opinions and thoughts were really taken to heart. As many people know, Greenbelt Station is a newer neighborhood, and so there really is a lack of trees. We have a really large amount of families and young children that play in the Central Park area, and it gets really hot out there. And so we're really trying to do this to help them to have a good experience while they're there. So I really appreciate this, and I think we've taken this a really long way. So I'd like to move to authorize the city manager to execute the purchase of and installation of the shade structures by Cunningham Recreation and Greenbelt Station, Central Park, not to exceed $86,153.64.
I second that.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Pope, you had a question or a thought you wanted to share?
No, I think it's going to be an excellent addition because there's a lack of shade because it's a really big park and there's just no shade. And in the summertime, I mean, I was over there a few times at some event. I mean, when that sun comes down, it's pretty brutal. So it's definitely needed, and I'm glad we're putting it in, and I'm hopeful that we put it in before next summer, so people are able to enjoy the outdoor facility.
The location of the shade structures, it's going to be on the perimeter of the park?
Yes, sir. Yeah, on the
So-
perimeter.
So the green space in the center
Will stay green.
Stay green, and it's larger than a football field.
Well, yeah, on the upper
On the upper half.
side, it is larger than a football field. We're talking about the lower level, down from the pergola.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Okay, got it. Well, Mr. Orleans, you had a comment.
I have a question. The benefit would not be realized for years, but the city has the opportunity to benefit from tree planting programs in recent years, and I'm just wondering if, in addition to the shade structures, which I would hope might be temporary for a number of years, but temporary nonetheless, if the city is planning on any tree planting in the Central Park area of Greenbelt Station, so-called.
Thank you. I don't know if you've had an opportunity to visit the Greenbelt Station area, but quite a few trees have been planted, and they're beginning to come to fruition. It takes time, but Mr. Varda.
Yeah, I don't think there is any program to plant more trees there. I think they want to keep that Central Park area open for free play and without any encumbrances. So the trees seem to be on the perimeter of the park, and certainly if any of them are dying or don't look good, they'll replace them. Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Thank you.
I should mention one thing on the Braden complex is Ms. DeWald, our art supervisor, is working on a public art project to rededicate Braden Field. We used to have a sundial there that is
Yeah,
no
yeah.
longer in existence, so we're gonna have another public art piece there eventually.
Yeah, I was wondering about that.
Yes.
Just today, I was wondering
Yeah.
about the sundial that used to be there. Yeah.
Yeah.
What's that? Yes, if you have a comment, please.
As far as tree planting is concerned, I'd just like to add that Casey Trees has a program in Washington, D.C. They've had it for a long time for giving free trees to be planted in the city, but they have extended that to Prince George's County. So it doesn't necessarily need to cost the city of Greenbelt anything to have trees planted there. And you'll find information about them on their website.
Yeah, I'm very aware of Casey Trees. They do great work, and they have extended their work to Prince George's County. Their offices are a small little office there, but very attractive in Washington, D.C. So, yeah. Oh, yeah. We have.
We have partnerships, yes.
Does that name sound familiar?
Mhm.